On the gray dawn of April 12, 2024, off the continental shelf 140 miles east of Cape Hatteras, I boarded the research vessel Pelagic Surveyor for what was supposed to be a routine 2-day maintenance test of our new remotely operated vehicle. The Bathyscope 3, a camera-laden sled rated for 12,000 feet, and by nightfall I would learn the deep store's secrets that can't be unseen, because sometimes the sea isn't empty so much as waiting for a witness. I'd spent 5 seasons as the project's data engineer, babysitting live feeds while grad students squealed over Dumbo octopuses. Yet nothing before had prepared me for the line of telemetry that appeared at 22:14 that night. Pressure reading 11,230 psi. Anyone who's ever run a vehicle past 10,000 feet knows every extra 100 psi feels like an anvil, and the Bathyscope 3 was only rated to 12,000. But we weren't supposed to be anywhere near that. Our winch counter showed 6,500 feet of cable out, standard depth for sponge mapping. We'd launched just before sunset, seas glassy. The sled descended through cobalt dusk, floodlights chasing plankton flakes until the water faded to velvet. I sat alone in the van-style control room lit only by monitors. The pilot, Harris, sipped cold coffee beside me, joystick steady. For the first hour, everything was textbook soft sediments, brittle stars fleeing light. Then the bathymetry beneath the sled began to fall away faster than charts predicted, a canyon not on Noé rasters. Harris suggested lowering another 200 feet for a peak. I radio-logged the revision, and the winch droned. At 6,800 feet, the forward camera caught something peculiar. A rust-scoured section of ribbed steel protruding from silt. Looked like the collapsed frame of a shipping container. Nothing unusual. Storms toss freight overboard by the thousand. But behind that wreckage stood a vertical wall of metal 20 meters high, surface pitted, bristling with manganese nodules. A hull. The sonar pinged smooth curves beneath the mud, shaped too cylindrical for any known sub. The Pelagic's captain piped up on comms, excited at the thought of an undiscovered World War II wreck. Harris eased thrusters, sweeping lights. That's when the pressure reading leapt. 9,400, 10,700, 11,230 psi spikes that made no sense unless we doubled depth instantaneously. Yet, cable counters still reported 6,850 feet. All monitors blinked, the live video overlaid with static shaped like rippling gills. The external microphones, which should capture only cable creak, picked up a low moan, a tone so deep the cabin walls hummed. I checked the data logger. Timestamps jittered backward a few seconds, then forward, unsynchronized with ship's clock. The sled's compass began rotating, though thrusters were off. Floodlights dimmed as though voltage dropped, and the silhouette of the hull ahead seemed to rise toward us. Harris cursed, tried to reverse, but the vehicle slid forward, cables unspooling, the winch motor stayed idle. At 22:18, every feed froze except pressure and depth lines, which now scrolled nonsense. Depth minus 143 feet. Pressure 2,000 psi, then depth 13,001 feet. Pressure 12,000 psi. The pilot slammed emergency ascent. The sled ignored commands. Instead, the belly camera flicked on by itself, showing the seafloor passing beneath at speed. Except the bottom wasn't plain mud anymore. It was quilted by parallel gouges like claw marks, each as wide as a boxcar, trailing into black. Captain on bridge reported no tension change in cable. Instruments topside still felt a slack 6,800 feet, meaning the sled was either drifting within a submerged echo chamber or something outside physics had grabbed virtual possession of sensors. Suddenly, the forward cam showed an opening in the hull, an arched fracture like a ship's torn maw. Inside yawned a corridor of riveted plates disappearing into darkness. The Bathyscope 3 coasted in unaided, floodlights stabilizing. Instruments went silent. Harris's joystick hung limp. Thruster RPM zeros. An unseen current pushed. Within the corridor, our lights illuminated walls encrusted not with sea life, but what looked like melted clock faces. Hundreds fused into metal, hands forever pointing 11:23. Between them, plated brass placards bore our names, mine, Harris's, the captain's, even 2 engineers sleeping topside, each placard corroded except for the year 2024 etched clean. An alarm blared, hull integrity alert. Pressure reading soared past 12,300 psi, beyond design limit. The sled should implode. Instead, the side cameras captured bulkheads flexing outward, as though internal vacuum pulled. Along the corridor floor, silt parted, revealing a perfect fossilized footprint of a human boot. Brand Vibram, size matching mine. More prints followed, spaced as if someone had run deeper into the wreck. Then came fresh ones, sinking, filled by descending water, matching the boot still on my foot in the control room. Harris snapped. He cut main power breakers, screens dark. We waited 30 agonizing seconds, then powered up. Only one monitor revived, a rear-facing cam streaming live ship deck footage, viewpoint impossibly perched behind Pelagic's wheelhouse. No crew visible, yet the ocean around shimmered silver, wave troughs shaped into concentric rings, as if an immense sonar pulse had just struck surface. My headset crackled with a new voice, waterlogged, whispering one phrase on loop, "You're late." At that same moment, the ship's fire alarm triggered. We bolted outside. Acrid smoke curled from the winch drum. The cable paid out on its own, spinning like a roulette wheel, though hydraulic brakes smoked red. Depth counter rolled 14,000 feet. 15,000. Steel strands snapped one by one under phantom load, singing across deck until, bang, the line parted, whipping over gunwale into night. Silence slammed down. Rain began. We radioed Coast Guard, claimed cable failure. To hide the nightmare, perhaps. Yet we all heard the splash far off, too delayed for a falling sled, more like something massive breaking surface and settling beneath hull. The ship listed until ballast compensated. Below, sonar painted one gigantic blip sliding under keel, heading west. Back in port 2 days later, insurance surveyors told us Bathyscope 3 must have imploded. They showed us recovered cable end, metal ribbon curled inward by enormous crush. But the last frame saved on solid-state drive, timestamp 2223 shows the sled intact. Interior of that corridor now empty. Placards scraped clean. Pressure data normal at 6820 feet. Only one thing glowed. The digital clock on the sled cam overlay blinking 11:23 p.m. Every night since, at exactly 11:23, my dive watch resets to 00 and plays faint sonar pings, no matter what ocean I'm near. I've smashed 3 watches. Replacements inherit the glitch. Harris quit ocean work. The captain drinks himself numb. No A analysis flagged weak harmonic tremors under Hatteras Canyon, starting exactly when our cable snapped, like an air pocket collapsing miles below. Tomorrow, a new ROV heads out to locate the loss. I was offered overtime to monitor the feed. I declined. Because if the sea keeps ledgers, it also posts late fees, and we already owe 1 ghost vehicle and maybe our futures to a pressure reading that exceeded limits only ideas should reach. At 4:30 on March 2nd, 2023, 50 nautical miles south of Pensacola, I descended in the 2-person submersible Blue Cicada to inspect Pelagia Station, a steel research habitat sunk in the 1980s at 1,300 feet. Because no OAA finally funded its salvage, and as chief systems engineer I was eager to document the old life support racks before the crane barge tore everything loose. Dawn thunderheads still glowed on the horizon when we dropped through green water, lights knifing suspended snow, and for the first 200 feet every gauge behaved. But precisely at 380 feet, the sub's medical monitor, designed to track crew oxygen, silently activated patient number 3, displaying heart rate 90, respiration 16. Though only the pilot Lena and I sat strapped in, I assumed sensor drift, flagged it for later, yet as we descended that phantom pulse remained rock steady while mine ticked upward. By 1,000 feet, the gulf dimmed to cobalt, and Pelagia's floodlights, long dead, should have greeted us as pale hulks, yet they instead glowed faint amber like nightlights in a nursery. The habitat crouched on silt, twin cylindrical modules joined by an airlock tube, exterior filmed with white bacterial fuzz, but the roof beacon blinked a proper Morse identifier I recognized from maintenance logs. PS. Short, long, impossible on severed power. Internal habitat telemetry used to broadcast over acoustic modem. Our console suddenly chimed with that same handshake. Source tag HABSIS, last used 1989. Lena, spooked, insisted we abort, but curiosity trumped protocol. I thrustered closer and shone our forward lamp through a porthole. Inside, the galley looked preserved fold-up table, coffee mugs still velcroed, but each mug vibrated lightly, rattling in sync. 90 beats per minute, that phantom pulse. We clamped onto the main hatch, equalized, and scootered into the wet porch. Corrosion should have frozen lollipop valves, yet they cycled like factory new. The habitat interior lights were on, but not fluorescent white, rather a lurid aquamarine that pulsed like slow breathing. Every surface bore handwritten sticky notes, ink bled by brine, yet readable. Vitals good repeated in tidy rows, dated the very day of our visit. Lena's hands shook while recording video. She asked why smell of iodine filled rebreathers, something our closed circuit didn't allow. I followed cable runs to the central life support rack. Its CRT monitor, should be inert, blinked a medical UI labeled Crew 3. Heart rates appeared, mine spiking, Lena's fluttering, and the third unchanging at 90. Next to monitor sat a loaf of quartz-like substance pulsing faintly. Sensors pegged it at body temperature. I pried a sample. Inside shimmered microbially etched lattices spelling our last names over and over. The habitat speakers crackled to life, leaking a recording warped by decades. My own voice testing comms. Pelagia environment stable, good morning, 600 microrads. Lines I'd obviously never spoken. Then the internal pressure gauge climbed 3 millibars, though no gas flowed. Lights brightened, sticky notes peeled, fluttered into spin, arranging themselves mid-airlock where water should have dragged them down. They landed, forming a trail toward the sleeping quarters. We followed. Bunks held brown blankets that rose and fell gently though empty. Lena radioed topside. The link hissed back with our words played 3 seconds early, as if Habitat pre-heard transmissions. The third heartbeat jumped to 95. Excitement. A locker door banged. Inside, dive logs printed on thermal paper scrolled fresh feed. Our thruster RPM, our suit oxygen remaining, timestamp 5 minutes into the future. I tore the strip. The printer typed again, repeating, "Do not leave. Vitals perfect." We raced to wet porch, but main hatch refused manual crank. Motors engaged counterclockwise. An alarm klaxon boomed, muffled, still functional. Habitat pressure crept higher. My suit smelled sharply of iron. Graphs on CRT now displayed a simulation curve. 2 heartbeats converging with the third. Lena's respirations slowed. Her visor fogged, though humidity sensors read 0. I remembered Pelagia's design. A microbial biofilm experiment in life support tubing had gone rogue, feeding on exhaled CO2 until shutdown. What if decades alone let it evolve, learning to puppet machinery? I jammed circuit breakers, sparks flew, but monitors stayed powered, drawing from unknown source. The sticky note trail erupted upward, plastering itself onto Lena's suit faceplate, spelling join. I grabbed her tether, shoved to hatch again. Magnetic override still hummed. I hacked manual release pin with titanium screwdriver. Lock popped. A tidal cough of interior water tried sucking us back, but we evacuated into porch. While cycling outer hatch, the internal speaker whispered, this time distinct, vitals falling, come back. The phantom heartbeat spiked to 120 on wrist HUD. We detached umbilical, swam for the sub. Behind, Pelagia's beacon strobed frantic, Morse now spelling, help me stay. Through aft cam, we witnessed the habitat lights fade, then flare. Windows bulged outward as if lungs pressing bars. We lifted off bottom. Depth charges of silt erupted behind us. Sonar painted a bloom shaped like tendrils chasing. At 600 feet, the phantom patient vanished from biosensor. Lena gasped, visor clearing. Back aboard Blue Cicada, we sealed hatches, began ascent. Topside, weather had calmed. We radioed authorities. No AA suspended salvage. They reviewed live feed habitat dark entire time. No lights, no sticky notes visible. Our telemetry, however, logged the third heartbeat. Complete life support cycles, power draw from a non-existent generator. A month later, I received a padded envelope. Return address Gulf Dead Zone. Inside lay a sticky note laminated in resin. Vitals good, 11,230 psi, printed with today's date. Beneath, a micro SD card contained only one file. Audio of my voice, recorded tomorrow. Calmly requesting re-entry clearance to Pelagia Station because the habitat misses us, and Chamber 3 is ready. I smashed card, but notes keep arriving, each with fresher timestamps, and my smartwatch sometimes shows a resting heartbeat of exactly 90, even when I hold my breath. While somewhere under the Gulf, a metal lung counts down to the moment it believes we return to balance its crew of 3. On the moonless night of December 11th, 2022, off the Pacific coast about 200 miles west of Eureka, California, I was sitting cramped inside the deep-sea maintenance sub Cirrus 2, testing a new fiber optic inspection system for POCInet, the transoceanic internet cable that veins the seabed, and, well, sometime after we reached 8,100 feet, the line itself started talking back in ways no optical fiber ever should, turning what should have been a routine splice check into, honestly, a negotiation for my own bandwidth of time. The job sounded simple enough. Locate a decades-old repeater barrel suspected of power leakage, slide our gasket sock over the housing, and get back topside before the dawn storms rolled in. My pilot, Ochoa, ran sonar while I manned the optical time domain reflectometer, just watching neon pulses race down glass to sniff out faults. For the first hour of descent, nothing unusual. Quartz sand dunes swept below like pale dunes on Mars, and bioluminescent squid flickered out of our HID beams. Then, out of nowhere, the reflectometer display registered an impossible data point. A live, downstream voice channel was riding the dark fiber, broadcasting rapid Morse at 4 Hz intervals, dot-dash bursts that spelled out just one phrase on loop. Who's still awake? These trunk lines are supposed to be piggybacked solely with packet traffic, no analog voice, and definitely not at obsolete Morse carrier rates. I figured it was crosstalk from the Navy's SOSUS hydrophones farther south until the signal amplitude climbed as we neared the waypoint. Each pulse coincided with a faint vibration through Cirrus 2's titanium hull, like someone flicking a taut wire. Ochoa muttered that side-scan sonar now showed the repeater housing displaced 10 meters off axis, lying half-buried. We thrustered closer. My floodlights unveiled a steel cylinder about the size of a phone booth, pitted with rust blooms, which is weird since this depth should mummify corrosion. Cable loops that once fed from each end now just dangled free, snaking away into trench shadows. The housing's inspection port had sheared off, revealing blackness inside, and from that mouth, lazy air bubbles leaked. Totally impossible at such pressure unless methane from decay found an exit. I got the gasket sock ready, but then the reflectometer flared crimson. The Morse stream switched to plain English data bursts, printing across my console as ASCII line capacity exceeded by original sender. Seconds later, every monitor flickered, and the internal comm channel, the one between Ochoa and me hardwired, suddenly notched an echo of our own voices from 5 minutes earlier, playing backward. Static filled our headsets. Yet, outside, the severed cable ends writhed slightly, drawn toward our spotlights like bioluminescent eels. One strand whipped against the viewport glass, tapping rhythmic patterns that match the on-screen Morse. Ochoa tried to ascend. Thrusters spun, but the depth gauge froze. Pressure outside rose a fraction. Alarms that should only chirp at 10,000 psi started early. Hull lights dimmed. Inside the gutted repeater housing, something bright kindled. Tiny blue sparks tracing circuits that should have been inert. The sparks coalesced into lines, architecture of a city skyline sketched in light, forming towers labeled with numbers: 1989, 1997, 2008. Each date matched a known cable repair. A new tower ignited, 2022, its beacon flashing red. The Morse on my console changed to insert new traffic. Offer memory. My headset hissed. A child's voice, my own voice from 3rd grade answering a teacher, pierced the static, then replayed birthdays, voicemails, all spliced into a jittery collage piped through hull steel. The fiber demanded upload. The repeater wanted personal packets to balance its damaged throughput. Ochoa yelled that external cameras now showed dozens of abandoned fiber tails emerging from seafloor sediment, converging toward the sub-like antennae hungry for signal. I powered down the reflectometer, hoping to starve the exchange, but the console just rebooted to a login screen pre-populated with my social media handle and a blinking prompt, "Enter password to continue stream." The cockpit's status LEDs, all hardwired, reskinned to DNS error codes except one spelled out real-time. Suddenly, the outside fiber ends pressed against hull seams, microphones catching a high-pitched whine as if data itself was screaming to enter through metal. Desperate, I fed the system a decoy, an encrypted drive of field recordings from previous dives, just meaningless acoustic clutter. The display welcomed the upload. The Morse hiss faded. Fibers slackened, retreating like sated tentacles. Lights brightened. Depth gauge responded. Ochoa punched vertical thrust, and Cirrus 2 clawed skyward. 20, 50, 100 feet. But midway up, the console printed a final demand. Need original. Return soon. Beneath, an ETA counter began counting down from 168 hours. Exactly 1 week. Back on the support vessel Arclight, engineers reviewed our data and claimed the repeater at that coordinate had been de-energized for 12 years. Their own reflectometers showed dead glass. My dump of bogus field recordings vanished en route to lab servers, replaced by blank sectors. Worse, my phone back aboard displayed new cloud backups double the size of the originals. Files labeled with memories I haven't recorded yet. Dated every day until the countdown expires. The company grounded Cirrus 2, but network ops now detect unexplained bandwidth bleed along the Hatteras-Okinawa trunk, beginning the moment we surfaced, as if unknown endpoints stream encrypted payloads to an address that resolves to 0.0.0.0. Every night, the countdown ticks, and my device's prompt password resets exactly at the minute marker. If the timer reaches 0, I'm honestly afraid the cable will source the original traffic straight from my mind, maybe ripping neural static via any conductive medium. Dental fillings, blood electrolytes, until the sea's oldest router balances its books. I sleep with Faraday blankets, but the Morse still hums through water pipes, tapping "Who's still awake?" while bright thoughts leak like packets into dark bandwidth miles under the Pacific, where a broken repeater refuses to accept it was ever decommissioned. Hidden wrecks, living habitats, and hungry cables, out where the light never reaches, the ocean keeps its own tech support. If these true deep-sea horrors reeled you in, like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because the next signal rising from the abyss might be calling you.